There we go.
Nice. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yu-Ling Chang, and I'm the ambassador for Kidsburg, as well as the co-producer for Remake Learning Days across America. It's been an honor to work on this series called So Now What? Helping parents and caregivers navigate a school year like no other. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out. And so through this series, we're going to discuss different topics that hopefully will be helpful to you as a parent and caregiver. The series is put together in partnership with Remake Learning Days across America, the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, PBS Kids, Learning Heroes, Fred Rogers Productions, WQED Pittsburgh, Common Sense Media. Tonight, this session was put together by PBS Kids and the Fred Rogers Production Company, and with the help of WQED Pittsburgh and Fred Rogers Center. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I'd love to just tell you a little bit about them. We have Dr. Roberta Schomburg joining us. She is the Executive Director of the Fred Rogers Center for Early Learning and Children's Media at St. Vincent College. Her background in child development and early learning led her to work with Fred Rogers on a project to help support teachers who were using Fred Rogers Neighborhoods TV program in childcare homes and classrooms. Her work continues to expand, including positions that she's held at the Erickson Institute, the board of the National Association of Education for Young Children, and Carlow University. And she continues her role as a consultant to Fred Rogers Production and an advisor to Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. Joining her is Gina Masciola from WQED, where she serves as the Director of Education Partnerships. She began her career as a classroom teacher and early learning consultant for Head Start, and then served as an early learning consultant for the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. At WQED, she has created engaging PBS programs for the Pittsburgh community, such as WQED Writers Contest, IQ Smart Parent, IQ Kids Radio, WQED Smart Schools, and more. So please join me in welcoming our two presenters tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I will briefly speak about this. This is our upcoming series. So you can see that we started last week with COVID-19 and kids' health with Dr. Freeman from Children's Hospital Pittsburgh. And tonight we're going to be talking about young children's social and emotional wellness. And then at 8 p.m. we'll also be speaking about tweens, teens, and mental health. Next week we'll be working with Learning Heroes, and they're really going to talk with us about how we can partner together with our teachers, how parents and caregivers can help plan their school year for their kids. And then after that, we'll be having Common Sense Media back to talk to us about tech safety and balance. And then finally, we'll end with learning resources. So we hope that you will join us for future Wednesday webinars. And with that, I will turn it over to Gina and Dr. Schomburg now.
Thank you. So tonight we are really lucky to have Dr. Schomburg here to talk with us about what is social and emotional learning. You will all notice in the chat, as we walk through some of this, there will be links dropped in the chat. They are really amazing resources for you all to explore after this is over. So those will also be located in a resource folder in a Google link that will be shared with you as well. So if you don't get them or can't copy them down quickly, know that you'll also have access to those after this is over. So Dr. Schomburg, let's talk a little bit about what is social and emotional learning. Maybe we can start there at the beginning.
Sure. Well, the social and emotional learning includes all of those skills that children learn that help them get along with other people, interact with others. It's also the skills that help them learn self-regulation and they're managing their own feelings. So we can separate them somewhat by saying the social skills are the skills they learn about how to get along. The emotional skills are the skills they learn in terms of self-regulation and stopping themselves from doing things. It's really important that we address social emotional learning in the early years because it does affect all other types of learning. When we think about cognitive learning, It certainly depends on their ability to pay attention, to be able to manage their impulses so that they can pay attention and learn. Their physical skills also are important, and we look at that, but it's the social and emotional that underlies most of children's interactions with other people and in their own mental health situation. So it's really critical that they learn how to do these things. We'll talk a little bit more about how we can support children in learning social skills and emotional learning skills.
So, all right, so this was just a quick definition that I've used in the past, just so sometimes people need that visual, for it. So SEL is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So all of those things you just said. And then I have this graphic that I love. So, we really talked about how social and emotional development already. You said that almost everything we do is dependent on the social and emotional wellness. And so, it's really important that to have academic success, we have that social and emotional piece in place. And that's been really tough these days, hasn't it?
Well, it has been really hard, and I think we're seeing it now as children are going back to school. Many of them are finding that old fears that they thought they had learned to manage are resurfacing when they have to think about um, concerns that they have about their own safety and all of the changes in routine that are going on. I think it's really a lot for many of us as adults to manage, let alone young children who don't have a lot of flexibility in how they manage their feelings. And so we're bound to see a lot of meltdowns in the preschool years and even in the early elementary years, with children just not being able to focus on what they're supposed to be doing. And when we add the virtual element to all of this, I think it can make it even more difficult for children to connect with their teachers and with their other friends at school when they're so isolated by themselves. So it's a big challenge for us. I had 5 of my grandchildren with me their first day of school, and we had to place them in different parts of the house, and I mean they were exhausted by lunchtime. So I know what parents are struggling with as we seek to make the world easier for them to manage during this time.
Yeah, it has really become a challenge, that's for sure.
Yes.
So I know that you have done some great work with Daniel Tiger and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, along with the Fred Rogers Center and Fred Rogers Productions. I know that Daniel is really an animated, almost animated voice for Fred and Fred's strategies, and that kind of rolls into the show. Let's talk a little bit about how Daniel can help us right now.
Okay. Well, I have a perfect example to share with you. It was not staged. It just came up suddenly. I have a 4-year-old grandson, and he came to visit and came flying in the house and said, "Grandma, Grandma, you're not going to believe this. What's happening in Daniel Tiger's neighborhood is the same thing that's happening to us." And he said, they don't call it the virus, but they had to cancel the fair. And Daniel was upset about that, just like I'm upset about the things we can't do. And he just went on and on and on. And he said, and Daniel's learning how to control his feelings. And I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, here it is coming back to tell me exactly what success we're having with children. So, I think it's important to realize that when we have themes in children's television that resonate with children, it really does help them learn the skills that they might need, the examples that they might need, and so forth. So in this particular, in Daniel Tiger, what we have always tried to do is to make sure that each episode has one social emotional theme that goes through it, and there might be 2 or 3 actually, but a focal point. And these themes are repeated in different scenarios to ensure comprehension, but to give children examples of problems. So there were things, for instance, in the Daniel Tiger special that resonated with my grandson because there were things he wasn't able to do and barriers that were getting in the way of his having a good time. So we try to make sure that the theme is explored in many ways so that what they're learning is relatable to a host of different children in different kinds of situations. And that we don't, we try not to be preachy, so that we're not telling children how they have to behave, but giving them the resources that they can use when they're feeling angry, when they're feeling frustrated, when they're feeling sad, that they can name the feeling, they can say what it is. And Fred Rogers often said, when feelings are mentionable, they become manageable. And so we hope that what we do is model for children those opportunities for them to talk about their feelings with the people who care for them, and that in the process they will learn to manage those feelings by sharing them and naming them and seeing that they are relatable to other people. We also, as many of you know who are familiar with the show, is that we do these with musical strategies. And so there are the songs that have staying power, that children can carry with them. And I remember being in a restaurant once where there were a group of preschoolers who were having to wait in line, and they were not very happy about having to wait in line. And but they did launch into one of the Daniel Tiger songs about when you wait, there's a reward. And the other one that they were singing is sometimes you feel so mad you want to roar. And it was amazing to me to see that these young children had their repertoire of songs that they could call up to manage. And pretty soon the other folks who were in the waiting line started laughing and talking with them, and quickly they had a chance to sit at their table. But it just changed the whole tone for everyone who was annoyed at having to wait. And so, we think that when children watch the show with older siblings or with families, that even the older ones sometimes can find that they're resonating with the songs and the strategies that are used.
That's awesome. You know what I love so much about the special that you put together, to kind of help us all through this incredible time that we're living in, is that the songs were so recognizable to me because they weren't just created for that particular episode, that those songs were actually, songs that were in other episodes, and the strategies and skills that Daniel has been teaching us for, 8 years, are really the skills and strategies that we need to get us through something like this.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And it's so funny. I actually found this quote from one of your colleagues, Chris Loggins, who is part of the production team over there at Fred Rogers. And he uses Fred's same quote, that, what's mentionable is manageable. And if we only talk about our feelings and the things we may be wondering about, it might make them easier to understand. So I love that. So I actually have a little clip from the special that Fred Rogers Productions put together. So let's watch that now for one moment.
Okay.
I wonder if the carnival's happening soon. Mom?
Yes, Daniel?
When can we go to the neighborhood carnival? Is it soon? Tiggy can't wait to go.
Oh, remember, my little tiger, there won't be a neighborhood carnival this year.
Grr! No neighborhood carnival? But we always go to the neighborhood carnival.
I know. Here, come sit with me, my big tiger. Things have changed a lot lately, and it's frustrating. Your dad and I are upset about it too. Do you want to talk about it? Ask questions about what's happening. It might help.
My question is, why can't we go to the neighborhood carnival? Grr!
That's a good question, Daniel. Dr. Anna told us that we shouldn't all get together with our whole neighborhood right now. We're staying far apart so we don't accidentally spread germs.
Oh.
Grown-ups are here to take care of you.
There are all kinds of ways that grown-ups can keep you safe.
All right. Yeah, so do you want to just talk a little bit about that? And
Well, I think that's that giving those kinds of examples is really does resonate. And you know, as I said before, I couldn't believe that my grandson immediately focused on that, and the fact that Daniel couldn't go to the carnival, and empathized with Daniel in a way that he was able to recognize that he had felt that way when he was disappointed, and that Daniel was learning to manage his annoyance, and so could he. And I think that those examples, when children just see somebody else having the same experience that they have had, it helps them see that these feelings are universal, and there's nothing wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with them as a person when they have these feelings, that there are ways to manage strong feelings, whether it's disappointment or sadness or fear, that there are things that they can do that will help, and that the people around them will help. I love the examples that are in the special end in Daniel Tiger throughout, of the role of the adults as a helper, as someone who helps children reflect on their feelings, find solutions, sets limits, of course, but sets limits in a way that helps children learn to internalize those limits themselves, and learn to manage and manage their own self-regulation and self-control. So I think those are great examples. I know as a parent, I had 4 children, 6 and under, including a set of twins. And I remember those days of just trying to stay on top of it all the time. And when we have a crisis like the coronavirus, it becomes even more difficult to manage our own feelings as an adult. So all the help that we can get, I think, is great. There's also a Daniel Tiger app that I wanted to mention, that it's an app for parents, and it's a free app, and it has a lot of these Daniel Tiger songs on it, so that the children can listen to it and scroll through a short clip and get some strategies for managing anger and fear and frustration, all of those feelings.
I also think, we always talk about what the kids are going to learn, right, from Daniel, and watching Daniel, and watching a lot of that educational television that we see. But I think what's so important is that intentionality for, like you said, for adults and for the caregivers. And the fact that now parents that have watched this and caregivers that have watched this have language to use with their kids. And so, in watching this and doing some of that co-viewing that we know is so important, I think everybody starts to learn a lesson.
Right, yes. And it's interesting, at the Fred Rogers Center, we have a group of teachers, preschool and kindergarten teachers, who are watching some of the old Mr. Rogers television programs and looking at how to integrate it into their classrooms. And I think we can do the same thing with Daniel Tiger in terms of particularly the preschool children, who, where watching a clip or looking at the app can give us a way to open the conversation with children and find out what they're thinking about this world around them and what things they're interested in learning more about.
Absolutely. So I skipped that. Those kind of got out of order. But I want to show you this day and night. I know you're probably familiar with the app. It's a Daniel Tiger app. But, we talked about, ways that we can help our kids. And you mentioned how important routines are. And, how having that routine and having kids knowing what's going to come next in as much as we can make that be a thing. So as much as we can help to control that space around them so they know what's going to happen next is so important. And so Daniel has created this amazing app to help with those routines. So we'll play a little video.
Good morning, neighbor.
You can help me brush my teeth. Yummy! Look at all those toppings.
Daniel, it's time to stop playing and get ready for bed.
Will you help rub the shampoo into my fur? Let's make believe that you can color my PJs any way you want. Agamaga.
Yeah, so just another example of how what you guys are building really can help us through some of these really difficult times. Things that you do every day to build those routines are the things that will help get us to the next page.
Yes, and I think the notion of routines, I think, is really critical during this time. It's really what keeps the kids moving ahead, because one of the challenges with this situation is all the routines have been turned upside down. So we have to help create new ones around mealtime, new ones around bedtime, new ones about getting dressed, getting to school. All of those things have changed, maybe in little ways, maybe in really big ways. And so something has to replace that, or children get really frustrated and feel sort of that they don't have any grounding. Yes, that's it's really important that we do that.
Yeah, so Daniel has tons and tons of amazing resources, and he's part of the PBS family, and we've got lots of other properties and resources that I was hoping to share tonight as well. So one of them is from Sesame Street. And so Sesame has developed an app that's really important. And so Daniel has a strategy kind of like this. I know he sings that song, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And so this is kind of a little bit like that. It talks about belly breathing and taking some time and thinking about how to solve your problem as you count. And so let's take a look at the Breaththink Do app that might be able to help with some of that social and emotional.
Little children, big challenges. To play, tap on the green button. Choose an activity. Look, this monster is frowning and his shoulders are all scrunched up. He's feeling frustrated because he tried and tried to put on his shoes, but he just couldn't do it. Tap on the monster's belly to help him put his hands on it. Tap slowly on his belly. Look, the monster is calming down. Yes, he looks much calmer. Great job! You helped the monster take 3 slow breaths to calm down. Now, he's gets ready to think about a plan for how to get his shoes on.
So that's just a little clip of that, but I love that next, he starts to think about, the bubbles pop up and he thinks about how he can solve his problems, and he gets 3 options. He can ask his sister, he can ask a parent, he can try a different way to put his shoes on. So, but these kinds of tools, I think, are really important for parents and caregivers to have to use with their children right now.
I think so. The other thing, Gina, that to remember is that when we can use something sort of outside the relationship, it can sometimes diffuse the frustration between the adult and the child when we're having to set limits. So there are times, I think, when parents can turn to something else to sort of help support self-control. Because when parents are feeling frustrated too, sometimes those interactions can just escalate a little bit. And if we can find, sort of a third party in a way to kind of diffuse the issue, I think it helps everyone.
Yeah, agreed. And then this is something that you can actually then take out of the app and take away from the tech. So once you have the strategy, you can turn a stuffed animal into the furry blue monster, or you actually take your deep belly breaths and have your child pat your belly and try and calm you down. So there's different ways to take that strategy and use it and engage, one-on-one.
Yes. Like the example in the restaurant where the girls were singing the song, "When you feel so mad, you want to roar." Take a deep breath and count to 4.
Exactly. You take it away from the, it's nice that somebody else, sometimes you're right, that third party, a fuzzy monster or cute little tiger, introduces something that seems, like you said, like non-preachy, and it's a really neutral path to introduce a strategy like that.
Right.
And so just like Fred Rogers Productions and Daniel Tiger, and all the wonderful content that you guys offer, Sesame is one of the other places that is a go-to for lots of information like this. So we've got the links in here for like an activity week for helping. There's Heroes for Health, and those links will all be available to everybody to click and check on. And I think we wanted to leave a few minutes for questions.
Yes, so feel free to put your questions in. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Gina. That was lovely, and it's always good to see Daniel Tiger. So I love that you talked about the importance of needing to build routine, about talking about your feelings, letting your child talk about their feelings with you, some of the breathing techniques that you gave. I feel like a question I get a lot from parents with young children, and I'm one of those parents, is like, how do you get your kids to understand the importance of wearing a mask and making it less scary? How do you bring in a new experience like that and explain what COVID-19 is?
I actually have something really quick that I'll show everybody that's on here. Did that screen change? Can you see the website?
Now we see your PowerPoint.
Okay, 1 minute, really quickly. So this is WQED's Learn at Home page. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there are some healthy habits for everyday learning. There's ways to make homemade soap. And then there's a link, how to talk to kids about coronavirus. And in these resources, you actually will find really cute, you'll find really cute like planners, and they talk about wearing a mask and why it's so important to do that. So almost like a picture schedule about doing that and putting it on and going to school, kind of like a little social story. And so Sesame Street has come up with a ton of those. And I believe Elmo actually just came out with a book. So Sesame's just releasing a book that talks about Elmo going to school wearing his mask, and he talks with his dad about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I agree. I think when like kids have a friend that they can think about going through the same thing, it helps them. I see there's a comment of like, where do I find this? We're putting the links in the chat box, but we will be putting all this information in our resource folder, and we'll be emailing you a link to that resource folder, and you'll also be able to watch this webinar again if you'd like. Another question that I often hear is I'm really worried about my child's mental health. And this is just such a odd time for all of us. It's unusual, especially young children. You know, they're so they just want to come up and give you a hug, and they can't, and they're not able to play with their friends. And so one of the questions that I keep hearing is like, well, what signs should I be looking for? What are the things that we should look for? What can we do to help with that? Any thoughts there?
Well, I think I think there are a number of things to pay attention to, and that would be changes in behavior. And I think, you know, when a child gets withdrawn, a child who is not typically shy or withholding, then I think, you know, we have to think about how can we draw the child out? How can we talk to the child about feelings? How can we sort of share that information without making the child feel self-conscious? So I think noticing the differences, whether it's more shyness than usual, more anger than usual, more fearfulness than usual. I think for all children, it could be a different reaction that they have to the concern. And so I think that as adults in children's lives, we just, if we pay attention to what those behaviors are, then we can begin to help children learn to manage them. And again, I keep going back to the idea that when we talk with children about this, it becomes much easier. And so just giving them the space to say what they're feeling, or to say they don't know what they're feeling, and to help articulate for them how we're all struggling with these feelings of frustration and scariness and fear and things like that, anger.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, looking for those signs of changes in feelings. And I know we have a question from one of our attendees, and I know this is true for my kids and other kids that my kids play with. It's easy, kids are getting more easily frustrated lately, you know, all of these changes. And what suggestions or techniques can you share to help calm a child down when they're really frustrated and it's typically out of their control, it's the situation? How can we handle those moments?
Well, I think, I mean, I think we've talked about some of those moments, thinking about how to manage oneself by breathing and calming. Sometimes with a younger child, it's holding the younger child. With an older child, of course, there would be different techniques. But I think helping children to tune in to those things that help them, and that help and pay attention to what happens, and comment on, you really were able to get over that feeling of fear or that anger you were feeling, and doesn't it feel good to be able to be back in control again, and giving them that kind of support. I think it's always frustrating for children when the adults can't sort of get angry about it, when, you know, when children are doing their best. And so I think if we can put ourselves in the child's position, then we can empathize with them, and it's easier for us to find ways that we can connect with them and help them learn to manage themselves, their anger, their frustration. And in the meantime, we can do the same because it gets contagious if we don't.
I think sometimes it's really interesting and helpful to be able to have those conversations when you're not in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Right. So to when you're in the car, or when you're sitting at breakfast, or when it's not in an escalated situation, and then you talk a little bit about, you know what, sometimes we're in such a good mood right now, but sometimes whenever we are feeling frustrated and upset, what are some of the things we could do? And so I think sometimes like rehearsing that almost, and giving that giving that advice before you get to the frustrating
Yeah,
place, it's sometimes helpful for
yeah,
when you get there.
exactly. And I think that as adults, we can sometimes notice when children are starting to get frustrated and give them some signals, sort of nonverbal ones or a verbal one, sort of a secret code that we can share with them to help them stop and think and redirect.
I often find myself counting backwards from 4 like Daniel Tiger. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our audience for being here tonight. Thank you for your questions. We hope to see you next week, where we'll be with Learning Heroes to talk about parent communication with school teachers. And later tonight, also, we have Common Sense Media on tweens, teens, and mental health. So Roberta and Gina, thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.